Hello and welcome to Module 7 of our series, Learning about Federalism. In this module, the question that we hope to answer is, how do federal countries deal with the fact that in many cases they are home to a great many different ethnic, language, and religious groups? In other words, how do they balance unity and diversity? We will first look at the kinds of unity challenges that federal countries have faced historically and that they continue to face today. Then we will examine some of the practical measures that federal countries have taken to accommodate these challenges. We will examine how federal countries have sometimes drawn the constituent unit map in such a way that there are home territories for particular groups. And we will look at the various ways in which federal countries have dealt with the challenge of linguistic diversity, of having more than one language within the country. Diversity is a vast subject, and we cannot address all of its dimensions here. If you are interested in exploring the subject in more depth, we invite you to look at the Forum of Federations video devoted exclusively to this subject called The Challenge of Diversity.
Some federal countries are relatively homogeneous. Their citizens, for the most part, have a strong sense of shared identity. Other countries are very diverse, home to many ethnic, language, and religious communities, and often also divided by class and economic situation. Both federal countries and non-federal countries can be diverse, and in both, unity can be a challenge. There have been secessionist, separatist, home rule, and autonomy movements in many countries. In the 1960s, Nigeria dealt with the secession of the Biafra region in the east. The war that ensued was very costly in lives and treasure. For many decades, Canada has experienced Quebec separatism. And in Spain, there are Catalan and Basque movements for independence or greater autonomy. More than 140 years ago in the United States, the southern slaveholding states tried to secede. A brutal civil war ensued. Some countries have tried to deal with unity challenges through repression, exclusion, or forced assimilation policies. These make the problems worse and often lead to violence.
I guess I would distinguish between three kinds of countries. There are those which basically have a largely homogeneous population everywhere. So one language and people have a certain regional identification, but it's quite secondary. So that'd be like the United States or Germany. The second is where you've got a majority and one or two minorities. So that'd be like Canada, where Canada, the majority is English speaking, 80, almost 80%, but you have 23% of the population which is French speaking. And so finding a way to make that minority feel comfortable with living with the majority. And then you have countries like India or Nigeria where there is no majority, but where you've got a number of different populations of different weights who are all sharing the same country. These are all different challenges, and federalism, it has been applied in all three cases. Where there's an homogeneous population, there's still regional interests, the size of the country, et cetera, and there may be traditions of sort of regional government. You can still have responsive government at the regional level, and you can have economic diversity. I mean, the tensions are not just ethnic or linguistic, but different regional interests, and so you've got that kind of diversity.
When democracies face a unity challenge, they can promote a positive national identity which is compatible with other identities in a climate of tolerance. In fact, a country can embrace diversity as a national value. It is important that a substantial majority of citizens in a democracy have a sense of attachment to the country. When one group feels that the national identity conflicts with its own identity, then the country's unity can be threatened.
A country like Canada, the fact that the French-speaking population has very significant powers through the provincial government in Quebec has been very significant. But there's also the issue of, well, what about French speakers outside of Quebec? And that can be true also for the English speakers in Quebec. And you get that in many countries, which is the issue of, as you federalize, you're creating new majorities at the regional level, but you're also creating minorities. So you have to always be thinking about those minority rights. Countries like India or Nigeria, it's in some ways easier because there's not a dominant group. But you do have to create a sense that out of this diversity, there is some sort of commonality nationally. Now, they've been helped by having linked languages, in both cases, Nigeria and in India, English, but also Hindi in India is a national language. But just a sense that their interests are tied together has been very important.
Many federal countries owe their stability to the fact that they've taken a balanced approach. In Canada, Pakistan, Spain, and India, diverse groups can consider certain states, provinces, or autonomous communities as their homelands. At the same time, all groups have significant representation at the center, in government, the civil service, and in the symbols of the country. Though it is difficult to do in most federal countries, India and Switzerland both created new constituent units to better reflect the country's ethnic and linguistic diversity. A number of federal countries have far more ethnic and language groups than they have constituent units. Pakistan, India, Ethiopia, and Nigeria are among these.
If you look at the broader sweep of federal countries, particularly those that have sort of tried to federalize at a certain stage, there are almost always minorities who don't fit whatever the map is. And so this becomes very significant in terms of, well, what are the rights of minorities within states? Do they have the right to if it's a linguistic issue, do they have the right to their own schools, to some government services, etc. And different federal countries have taken different approaches, or even different parts of federal countries have taken different approaches. I think the first thing to bear in mind is that one should always think of a country or a unit within a country in terms of sort of the fundamentals of citizenship as the first cut. So whoever you are, you have the right to vote, and you have the right to participate in sort of public office and all of those types of things. There have been problems created in some federations where the right of citizenship is quite constrained for certain minorities.
Diversity has many different aspects. It includes religion, tribe, cultural heritage, economic status, and gender. Federal democracies can have measures or provisions relating to all of these. However, many federal countries have made great efforts to address one particular type of diversity, diversity based on language. The ability to communicate is fundamental to citizenship and democracy. For millions of people around the globe, their most important identifying characteristic is their mother tongue. Many federations with more than one language are acutely aware of the fundamental importance of language and have taken a wide variety of approaches to the challenge of language rights. India has 40 languages spoken by more than 1 million people. Hindi, which is the mother tongue of almost 1 in 5 Indians, is the official national language. English is also widely used and is considered the link language. The Indian states can choose among 22 constitutionally recognized languages for matters under state jurisdiction. In Nigeria, the Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo languages are spoken by many millions of people and all have official status. Some 450 other languages are also used in various regions. Some are the mother tongue of only a few thousand people. Others, such as Tiv and Bini, are spoken by 1 million or more. English is the principal language of public administration and secondary and post-secondary education throughout Nigeria. In Ethiopia, Amharic is the working language of the federal and some state governments. There is no official language. States can choose their own language of work, and English is widely used in education, business, and government. Switzerland has 3 major official languages: German, French, and Italian. And there was one recognized national language, Romansh, even though it is the mother tongue of a relatively small population. The Swiss federal government operates in all 3 official languages. As for the cantons, the majority, 22, have only one official language. In those cantons, education and public services are available only in the local language. There are 3 bilingual cantons and 1 trilingual canton, which offers services in more than one language. In South Africa, English and Afrikaans are both used, as are 9 indigenous languages that include Swana, Ndebele, Zulu, and Soto. English is the dominant language at the federal level and in the education system. Indigenous languages are used locally for oral communication and some teaching at the primary level. Canada's 2 main languages are English and French, and the country is officially bilingual at the federal level. One province is also officially bilingual, New Brunswick. Quebec has adopted French as its official language, but offers services in English to its large English-speaking minority. In the Arctic territory of Nunavut, the Inuit language, Inuktitut, has official status. The other provinces and territories are officially English, although most offer services in French to their French-speaking minorities. There are also some services available in Canadian Aboriginal languages, such as Cree, Ojibwe, and the Dene languages. In Canada, the rights to language of education are guaranteed by the Constitution. Wherever they live, English and French-speaking Canadians have the right to education in their own language, providing their numbers in any given region are sufficient.
Mon père vient du Canada et ma mère vient de l'Écosse.
In practical terms, this means that there are French schools in most regions of Canada and English schools in most parts of Quebec. The Canadian approach, then, is that language rights can be portable and are not confined by geography. This is in contrast to the geographic approach chosen by many other federations. This difference in approach underscores the fact that federalism offers a range of ways to accommodate diversity. No federal country has a perfect recipe that can be easily adopted by others. The value in our studying how others handle the challenge of diversity is not that we should copy other countries. Its value is to open our minds and imaginations to the full range of possibilities that present themselves when there is goodwill and a tolerant and democratic spirit. In this module, we have attempted to explore the issues related to our question: how do federal countries balance unity and diversity? To reinforce our learning, let's try a couple of multiple choice questions. First, which of the following are unity challenges that federal countries have faced historically and that they continue to face today? A weak sense of shared countrywide identity. B, many ethnic, tribal, and religious communities divided by class and economic situation. C, secessionist, separatist, home rule, or autonomy movements. D, all of the above. If you chose any of these answers, you are correct. All of them are examples of unity challenges faced by countries historically and even today. Some countries have faced only one challenge: while others have faced several. No two countries are exactly alike, but we can all learn something by examining the experience of others. The second question is this. Many federal countries owe their stability to the fact that they have taken a balanced approach to accommodating diversity. Which of the following would you consider a balanced approach? A, organizing their constituent units so that some are, in effect, homelands for particular ethnic, tribal, or language groups. B, assuring that diverse groups have significant representation at the center, in the government, in the civil service, and in the symbols of the country. C, creating new constituent units to better reflect the country's ethnic and linguistic diversity. D, making a variety of different kinds of provisions for language rights when there are two or more languages in common use. E, all of the above. The answer is that any of these approaches can be considered balanced. They all attempt to balance respect for the rights of diverse groups with the need to have some sense of overarching identity for the country as a whole. Perhaps the single most important lesson we might take from this brief look at diversity and unity is that federalism allows for the respect and recognition of multiple identities without negating a countrywide identity. In other words, just because a person is a Catalan, a Bengali, or a Quebecer does not mean that she or he cannot also be Spanish, Indian, or Canadian.